Safety doesn't sound like a very exciting thing, but when you're talking about blowing things up and people being in dangerous situations, and it gets pretty exciting. But figuring out how to do it safely, is the only way that all of us get to keep doing it. Not only just to be able to keep doing it, period, but to keep doing it with a clear conscience and to be excited about doing things that are dangerous instead of dreading them. Everybody that works on Deadliest Catch in the field knows they're going to do something dangerous and expects to take risks. But I think, the hardest thing about any job is, as an executive producer, the hardest thing about any job is walking into a situation and trying to assess what the risks are, because every show has different risks. For example, Ice Road Truckers Season 2, we were working with trucks containing hazardous chemicals, so we had to take hazmat training. All of our crew had to take hazmat training. Ice Road Truckers Deadliest Roads, which we filmed in India, where there was this massive percentages of, the high percentages of traffic fatalities. We all wanted to learn triage training, CPR, all of that kind of first aid training, and we also wanted to make sure we had an ambulance with us in our convoy. On Deadliest Catch, we rely heavily on the Coast Guard for training. The biggest risk is people falling overboard and freezing to death, essentially. So everybody gets survival suits. We train everybody with the Coast Guard. They do extensive training where each cameraman actually has to get in the water with a survival suit on, be able to climb into a life raft. So I think it's figuring out what the niche is in each one of these things, so you can properly train your guys. That's the hardest thing, is identifying what that unique training is that's needed, or what the unique tools are that you need to do something safely, whether it's a harness or a fire extinguisher, or in our case, personal locator beacons if you fall overboard so they can find you. I think the easiest thing to do as an executive producer, on a TV show is, for safety, is to instill an atmosphere where people not only feel okay about highlighting something they're not comfortable with, that's dangerous. That's not enough. It's really got to feel. People have to come to you with ideas about how to make a set or their environment safer, and feel like they're doing a good job because they're doing it. They have to be encouraged, I think, to feel like they're excelling, and they should be able to take pride in that instead of being fearful for it. And frankly, on every show that I've worked for, some of the best ideas have come from field producers, who have a front seat to whatever that dangerous situation might be, and come back to me and say, like, hey, what would be really good for this, I think, is like if we had, whatever that tool might be. Or if, like, hey man, maybe we just don't need to do it exactly like this, I have another idea. The biggest thing though is instilling an attitude where safety is not this like geeky thing. It's like, hey man, we do a dangerous fucking job, and people are gonna get hurt probably doing what we do, no matter what we do. And I'm not talking about major injuries, but people are gonna get knocked around on the deck of a crab boat. They're gonna trip, they're probably gonna bruise ribs, they might, break a rib occasionally. People have broken fingers. There are all kinds of lacerations that happen. No matter what you do, you're going to have things like that happen. But a smart producer wants to be able to stay in for a season and figure out how to do it, and not die. There's nothing geeky about not wanting to die, And so it's just instilling an attitude, I think, amongst the crew, a spirit amongst the entire crew of whether, where somebody feels like an outcast if they're acting outside of safety. And I fire people. We have stationary cameras on Deadliest Catch, and I would fire somebody if I saw them consistently operating, without a life vest on, or consistently wearing really dark colors all the time. If you fall into the Bering Sea without a life vest on at night and you're wearing a dark outfit, you're fucking gone. So the last thing and I don't think that. I've had talks with people about that once I've seen that, I've seen somebody do that on tape, and usually they're like, oh my God, I didn't think about it, that was stupid, and then they don't do it anymore. But if you have somebody who's just willing to take those risks and who doesn't, and is very cavalier about their safety, then, I think you can get rid of them. And I think if you do that, everybody else feels more emboldened to, to take it seriously. One of the most dangerous things that we do on Deadliest Catch is capture our aerial photography. The Coast Guard has, you know, $2 million helicopters that can travel in 120 knot winds, and they do, and they're badasses for it. But we have this, you know, basically just a consumer helicopter. It's a Bell Long Ranger, which is, you know, a decent helicopter by any standards. But for that kind of atmosphere, we can't really, that kind of environment, we can't fly that in winds above, you know, 25 to 30 knots. And unfortunately, the boats actually look the best when it's blowing, you know, that or above. And so we're always kind of right on the edge. But unfortunately, weather causes us to ground the helicopter a lot. And one thing that we were able to, and it frustrates us, and it's in the past, it really makes us kind of, it has made us want to kind of push it with the helicopter. But in this past season, going into it, knowing that our helicopter, which is a very expensive proposition to run that thing each day, it's one of the most expensive things we do too. Instead of putting all the pressure on trying to really get as many shots out of it as we could, one thing that we did differently this year was to build a rig on a pickup truck where we could actually take our motion stabilized camera off of the belly of the helicopter whenever the winds were too high, and we could land it without worrying about losing material for the day. And then we would take that and we would put that on this pickup truck with a special mount on it, and we could drive the pickup truck around and pick up all kinds of really amazing motion stabilized pictures and continue to basically get the value out of that camera without putting our own. I mean, it's myself and a pilot and my DP who are in the helicopter, so we were managing our own risk by doing that, but also finding a way to make use of that camera. The cool thing is it ended up giving this season its own look, you know, because we had a different camera perspective that we'd never seen before. What other new things have we done? You know, I hear people talk about safety a lot, especially in reality. You know, sometimes safety can be expensive, you know, and finding ways to, sometimes technology, some of the new technology, safety technology can be expensive. And I think that there can also be creative ways to make your production safer without actually spending a whole bunch of money. This past season, we did a deal with a company called McMurdo. They make all kinds of safety devices for the marine industry. And what we were able to do is a product placement with them, so that they gave us a whole bunch of free material, and we were able to show some of it being used on the show, and they ended up paying us to do it. But at the same time, I was able to outfit every single person on my crew with a personal locator beacon that would be seen by the Coast Guard if they had, were to fall overboard. And they had another, which is a new device called a Fast Find, that basically if you fall overboard, the captain would be able to see where they are on his own plotter. But being able to figure things like that out so that you actually get paid to be safer is amazing too.